If you use the Korg DSS-1 a lot, well, this is for you. This is the mothership. This is my new editor for the Korg DSS-1, and you can do a lot in here. It runs in your web browsers. There's no installer or anything. You can just load up the file and it's ready to go. And it's free, so if you want to use it, please download it from my web shop. It costs absolutely nothing. This is my personal tool, and I've designed it so I can get most out of working with the DSS-1. Up here you have MIDI ports in and out. You have to hook up your DSS-1 through MIDI ins and MIDI outs. You can check out your find your MIDI interface up here. If you experience glitches when working with the DSS-1 from this editor, you should know that, and you probably do as well, know that the DSS-1 is notoriously glitchy when it comes to MIDI sys. It's not always in sync, so if you experience glitches, you can increase the value here and you might experience less glitches. Also, if you tick this box follow, it will be so that when you choose another program or patch on your DSS-1, the editor will follow. Right now I have my DSS-1 on program number 1, patch number 1. If I now increase that up a patch, like this, you can see that the program updates here. If I go back, you can see the editor follows suit. So moving up between patches, the editor will follow. That's very important. So what can we do here? Well, let's change the attack here. Dial down the resonance. Change the multisounds. As you also know, the Korg DSS-1 does not follow in real time when you do changes. So when you hold a note and dial in on the cutoff, you won't hear anything unless you take the note again, strike the keys again. That's also why I've enabled this little retrigger button here. So you can actually retrigger the Korg DSS-1 directly from the editor, or you can just press the keys. I can change the time of the digital delays here. And maybe dial back on the modulation from the digital delays. All well and good, everything you expect from an editor of this kind, so this works flawlessly. But I have a couple of other tabs up here. Oh, and by the way, I have a collapsible mini tutorial text file here on each tab, so you can get some tips and tricks while you're working the editor. But in this tab, multisounds and samples, this is where the fun starts in many ways, at least for some people. Again, we have a little collapsible text tutorial here. And also, if you do changes here, please save to your floppies or disk floppy emulators all the time, because something might happen and you've lost everything. So as you know, save as often as you can. Anyways, here's the patch. And the DSS-1 is a sampler, and as you know, many of the patches programs in a DSS-1 consists of samples with more than one region. A multisound consists of many samples, and by pressing this button here, read list, I read in all the multisounds in this system. So you have 16 multisounds. On the disk I've loaded into my DSS-1 here, and here are the names and the lengths and base addresses and everything for these multisounds. And I can also pick out one of the multisounds here. Let's just go for multisound number 1 and read that, and that's been read in. And now I can change the name, I can set the loop to off if I want to, and set the intervals if I want to. And down here you can now see all sounds or samples which are part of this multisound, which you now can manipulate and set top keys, original keys. You can tune it, set levels, cutoffs, start addresses, lengths, loop starts, etc. for each of the samples. That's very cool. And I can go a step further as well and fetch each sample like this. This is a preview of the sample, the first sample in that multi-sound. And I can now actually go into the absolute start address of this sample if I want to. But remember, if you request this PCM sample from the DSS-1, it will be transferred over MIDI, and that can take a long time if it's a long sample. So that's why I've also included different chunks of data here, so you can speed up the process. But again, MIDI sample dump is notoriously slow, so I wouldn't actually do start and end times on samples in the DSS-1 directly from here. You're much better off doing it directly on the DSS-1 itself, because then you don't have to send the sample over to the editor, to the computer. So this part here is for special occasions, so to speak. But up here, this is all happening in the pointers. So this is where you'd actually change out start and end points of samples in a multisound, etc. If you never used a DSS-1 before, most of what I'm saying here is gibberish, Greek, but if you know the DSS-1, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So that's all well and good. And you can also save this as a WAV file, this PCM sample. If you bring it over, you can save it over to your computer. Down here, you can send raw sys6 parameters directly from the editor to the DSS-1. If you want to try out a sys6 parameter, like a filter cutoff with a special value, you can just dial it in here and send the raw change to the DSS-1. This is more if you want to experiment with stuff. This is not part of the editor as such, but you know what I mean. I can also send this back to the DSS-1 when I've made the changes, of course. So that's good. And up here, if I go back to the top here, up here, programs and system, when I've done all the changes I want to do, I can write this back to the DSS-1 as a program, as a patch, and it will overwrite in the DSS-1, and then I can save it to the floppy or a floppy emulator from the DSS-1 itself. So you can basically do everything from this editor except actually starting up the floppy drive for saving or loading. This editor begins when you have loaded up samples, programs, patches into the DSS-1 from the floppy or floppy emulator. And another thing, I suggest you always do edits while the DSS-1 is in play mode. And if you're unsure what mode the DSS-1 is in, you can read that from this button here. This is now in play mode, meaning that I've not enabled parameter edits on the DSS-1 itself. I can do that now. Now I've pressed program parameter on the DSS-1. Now I can edit parameters on the DSS-1 itself. And if I now check the read mode, it is now in program parameter, and I highly suggest you don't do edits from this editor while the DSS-1 is in that state. And I went out of that, and now it's back in play mode. I can also read program names here. Here are the programs in my DSS-1 right now. Like this. ThinPad. And this is ThinPad, program number 6. It's read everything, and I'm ready to play it. I'm not saying there aren't bugs in this program, and if you download it and use it, it is as is. You're on your own. I don't offer any support or feedback calls on this app. This is made for me. It is a personal tool for me. So you are on your own if you download and use it, but it's worked great for me, and it can do a lot of things on the DSS-1. So thanks for watching. I'm Espen Kraft.